The
Good
internet's
morning,
been buzzing
everybody.
with one
We have
question.
something pretty exciting
What really
for you
happened
today.
to people online are convinced something wild happened to the husband behind Laura Farms. Comments claim he vanished, others whisper about a secret fallout, and every new video gets dissected frame by frame. But here's the problem. Most of what's circulating is speculation stacked on speculation. So what's actually going on, and why did a quiet shift turn into a full-blown internet mystery? Today, we're breaking down what viewers noticed, how the rumor machine took over, and the details that get ignored when clicks matter more than facts. Because the real story isn't just about Grant, it's about how the internet reacts. Laura Farms didn't blow up just because of tractors and cornfields. What pulled people in was how personal everything felt. The videos weren't polished farm commercials, they felt like real life, filmed in real time, with real stress, mistakes, and wins. Viewers weren't just watching farming content, they felt like they were tagging along for the ride. And a big part of that early connection came from seeing Laura and her husband working side by side. Grant wasn't framed as some flashy on-camera personality. He felt grounded, practical, and familiar, the kind of presence that made the chaos feel balanced. Whether he was helping in the field, reacting in the background, or just being mentioned casually, it created the sense that Laura Farms wasn't a solo project. It was a partnership. That dynamic made the channel feel more authentic and relatable, especially to viewers who like the idea of building something with the person you're married to. Over time, audiences started to feel invested in that relationship, even if they didn't realize it. They weren't just following crop updates or equipment upgrades anymore. They were following a story. So when Grant started appearing less, even subtly, it stood out. Not because anything dramatic was said, but because silence feels loud when people think they know your life. And once viewers notice a change they can't explain, curiosity turns into speculation fast. And that's where things started to spiral. It didn't start with an announcement or a dramatic moment. It started quietly. A few videos went by where Grant wasn't as visible. Then a few more. No explanation, no warning, just a noticeable shift that longtime viewers picked up on almost instantly. And when you build an audience that feels close to your daily life, even small changes feel huge. At first, it was harmless curiosity, comments asking if he was busy, jokes about being off camera, people filling in the blanks with reasonable explanations. But social media doesn't sit with uncertainty for long. The longer the silence stretched, the more viewers began to read into everything else. Tone of voice, video pacing, even what wasn't being said. Ordinary content suddenly felt like a puzzle with a missing piece. That's when the theories started multiplying. One comment turns into a thread turns into a clipped video turns into a bold claim with zero context. And because nothing had been officially addressed, there was nothing to shut it down. The absence of information became fuel. For some viewers, less visibility automatically meant something went wrong. What made it worse was how confidently people started talking. Speculation stopped sounding like guessing and started sounding like facts. And once that happens, the story takes on a life of its own. Not because anyone knew more, but because uncertainty spreads faster than the truth. And that was only the beginning of how far this rumor would go. The situation really exploded when the rumors stopped being casual and started sounding official. In early 2025, posts began popping up that didn't just ask questions, they made claims. Words like confirmed, exposed, and finally revealed started showing up in titles and captions, even though nothing had actually been confirmed at all. Suddenly, what started as curiosity was being framed as a full-on breakup story. Short-form platforms poured gasoline on it. One video would hint at a split without evidence. Another would react to that video. Then a third would summarize both, adding dramatic wording to make it feel new. Each layer made the story sound more real, even though no new information was added. Most viewers didn't trace it back to the source. They just saw repetition and assumed repetition meant truth. What's interesting is that even some creators pushing the rumor quietly admitted they didn't have proof. They'd say things like, "Allegedly," or "People are saying," then spend the rest of the video talking as if it already happened. That kind of framing blurs the line between fact and fiction, especially for viewers scrolling fast. And because Laura never publicly addressed it, the speculation kept growing. Silence got interpreted as confirmation instead of what it usually is: privacy. By that point, the narrative was no longer about what actually happened. It was about what people wanted to believe. And once the internet locks onto a dramatic version of a story, pulling it back to reality becomes almost impossible. What really kept the rumors alive wasn't new information. It was the way the internet is built. Once a dramatic idea takes hold, content starts feeding off itself. One creator posts a vague theory. Another rewrites it with a more aggressive title. Someone else turns it into a timeline, even though the timeline is mostly guesses stitched together with screenshots. Before long, the same story is everywhere, just wearing different packaging. Clickbait plays a huge role here. Titles are designed to trigger emotion, not accuracy. Words like shocking or hidden do the heavy lifting, even when the video itself admits there's nothing concrete. And because platforms reward watch time and engagement, the most extreme version of the story spreads the fastest. Calm explanations don't travel. Drama does. There's also the illusion of credibility. When viewers see multiple videos repeating the same claim, it feels validated. But most people don't realize they're watching variations of the same source, recycled again and again. It's an echo chamber disguised as research, and once that echo gets loud enough, it drowns out anything more reasonable. Another layer people forget about is fake accounts and impersonation-style pages. Big creators attract copycats pretending to be insiders, relatives, or friends of the family. A single fake comment can spark hundreds of replies, screenshots, and reaction videos. None of it verified, all of it shared. By this point, the rumor wasn't surviving because it was true, it was surviving because it was profitable. And that's when the story fully slipped out of control. Once you step away from the rumor cycle and look at what can actually be verified, the story changes fast. Reputable sources that have profiled Laura Farms still describe Grant as Laura's husband and farming partner, not as someone who mysteriously vanished. Local coverage and agriculture-focused features have referenced him directly, even quoting him when discussing the workload behind filming, editing, and running a modern farm. That's not how media treats someone who's suddenly gone. There's also long-form content that presents them together, not as a fractured story, but as a shared one. Farming podcasts and industry discussions have spoken about Laura Farms as a couple-led operation, framing their work as a partnership rather than a solo act. None of these sources hint at drama, conflict, or a sudden fallout. And importantly, none of them back up the viral claims floating around online. What stands out most is the timeline. The credible mentions don't abruptly stop at the same moment the rumors begin. Instead, they overlap. That alone pokes holes in the idea that something explosive happened behind the scenes. If there had been a major public shift, reliable outlets would have reflected it, or at least acknowledged a change. Instead, what you see is something much more common, a difference between what creators choose to share and what audiences expect to see. Grant becoming less visible doesn't mean he disappeared. It means access changed, and that distinction gets completely lost once speculation replaces verification. When you strip away the theories and dramatic framing, the most realistic explanation isn't shocking at all. It's intentional distance. As Laura Farms grew, the channel stopped being just a camera in a tractor cab and started becoming a full-scale business. With that kind of growth comes pressure, safety concerns, and decisions about what parts of life should stay off camera. Not everyone involved wants the same level of visibility, and that's especially true when millions of strangers are watching. Grant stepping back doesn't point to a hidden disaster. It points to boundaries. Farming content might look simple on the surface, but it brings real-world risks. Showing locations, routines, and personal dynamics can attract the wrong kind of attention. For many creators, the fix isn't quitting, it's sharing less. And choosing privacy doesn't require an announcement, even if the internet expects one. There's also the workload factor. Behind every video is planning, filming, editing, brand coordination, and problem-solving that viewers never see. It makes sense that roles shift as operations scale. Someone who was once visible on camera might move into the background, handling things that don't translate well to short clips. That kind of change doesn't make headlines, but it happens all the time. The problem is, normal explanations don't satisfy an audience trained on drama. Silence gets framed as secrecy. Distance gets framed as conflict. But most of the time it's neither. It's people adjusting to growth. And once you accept that, the mystery doesn't disappear. It just becomes a lot more human. The reason this story took off the way it did says less about Laura Farms and more about how audiences interact with creators. When people watch someone consistently, they start to feel included in that person's life, not just as viewers, but as insiders. Over time, that turns into expectation. Viewers don't just enjoy the content, they expect access, and when that access changes, it feels personal. That's where parasocial attachment kicks in. Even without realizing it, people begin tracking patterns, relationships, and routines as if they're part of the circle. So when Grant appeared less, some viewers didn't see it as a creative decision. They saw it as a red flag. The internet is conditioned to assume the worst because worst-case scenarios are more entertaining than boring reality. Algorithms reinforce this behavior. Platforms push content that sparks emotion, especially confusion and outrage. A video calmly explaining privacy choices won't spread the way of video, hinting at something dark will. So creators chasing views lean into ambiguity, whether they admit it or not. The result is a feedback loop where speculation gets rewarded and restraint gets ignored. Over time, that shifts how stories are remembered. The absence of proof stops mattering. The rumor becomes the headline, and the headline becomes truth through repetition. That's why so many viewers swear they heard it was confirmed, even when it never was. In the end, what happened wasn't a scandal. It was an expectation mismatch. And the internet doesn't handle that quietly. At the end of the day, the mystery surrounding Laura Farms and her husband isn't built on facts. It's built on assumptions. A change in visibility turned into a story the internet wanted to believe, and repetition made it feel real. What actually happened was far less dramatic. Boundaries shifted, priorities changed, and privacy became more important than feeding speculation. But in a space driven by clicks and emotion, quiet decisions get rewritten as chaos. And that's the real takeaway here. Sometimes nothing happened at all, except the internet proving how fast it fills silence with noise.